My friends, it has finally happened. A man that I have also quoted a lot on this channel, a war criminal and terrorist of Russia, the butcher of Donbass, and the man whose special forces unit shot down the Malaysian Airlines in 2014 in Donbass, Igor Girkin was arrested. Order given by Putin personally. In today's video, we'll look through the situation and all of the information that is out there about the arrests. On this photo, you can see the leakage of the Putin's presidential administration report, and I'll read a sentence from it to you. Take repressive measures against those with an unsound mind. Unsound mind is the wording they used, including Strelkov Girkin. The list of offenders to be taken measures against also includes two members of the State Duma. Two members of the Russian parliament, basically. So now the purge in the army has reached political system. It's also a purge of politics, purge of dissidents and people who think differently. Stalinism is slowly creeping back into Russia. First of all, who was Igor Girkin? I ought to make a special video on his life, but in this one I will very quickly summarize the most important for you, and this tweet is perfect. Igor Girkin is not an opposition leader or Putin critic. Girkin is a Russian terrorist and war criminal responsible for war crimes in Ukraine since 2014, like shooting down the MH17 flight and the deaths of hundreds of people. For shooting down this Malaysian Airlines flight, Putin made him a war hero. Putin's propaganda lifted this guy up and made this guy. Before that, he was just a colonel of the Russian special forces in Donbass. After shooting down this plane, he was made a Russian hero. Igor Girkin has been very vocal about the problems of the Russian army, and recently, in the recent month, he has been very aggressive against Putin himself, calling him a coward publicly. Why has he not been arrested or killed or thrown out of the window in Russia? Because Putin's own propaganda is what made this guy. Also, another reason is that Girkin was the colonel of the special forces and intelligence. Putin is the result of the Soviet intelligence. Girkin is the result of Russian intelligence. They're similar guys, coming from the same background. Putin attacking Girkin would be like Putin attacking his own. The whole of Russia is led by Putin like a huge mafia intelligence branch. Girkin and his angry patriots clubs were the only ones in the whole of Russia allowed to criticize Putin personally and the Russian Ministry of Defense for so long, for months actually, half a year and more. The most important question here is why now? Why not half a year ago when he started very vocally attacking Putin and the Russian Minister of Defense? Well, the answer is quite simple. It has everything and anything to do with the Wagner mutiny, with Prigozhin. Before Prigozhin's mutiny, Putin maintained his strongman image in Russia. He could tolerate people like Girkin every now and then attacking his image. After Prigozhin's mutiny, which showed on the 24th of June how weak Putin is. What a coward he is, because he fled Moscow, he fled to St. Petersburg along with his entourage. His strongman-like image in the Russian people's minds was shattered, and after that, Putin is scarred, his image is scarred. He cannot allow people like Girkin criticizing him anymore, because it brings out his weakness, which he felt with Prigozhin's mutiny firsthand. Without Prigozhin's mutiny, Girkin would probably be allowed to continue his criticism against Putin personally and the Russian Ministry of Defense. If you're not familiar with what was Igor Girkin's message, then one of the most dangerous things he openly and publicly said and talked about was the inevitable outcome of Russia having to surrender Crimea to Ukraine, because Girkin is a very capable military commander. I cannot believe I'm saying this, but he's one of the more capable commanders in the Russian army. He's not in the army system anymore for a decade. But the way he was talking about the issues of the Russian army, I felt like if the Russian army would actually listen to him, then Ukraine would have serious issues. Luckily they don't. Girkin saw it clearly and still sees how Russia will have to surrender Crimea to Ukraine. And he talked about this possibility. He also brought out how Russian Ministry of Defense has failed to pay their troops on the front lines for a few months now. And information Putin does not want out there. Basically, Girkin was not afraid to talk the truth, speak the truth about the issues of the Russian army and the Russian army system. And this is extremely dangerous for Putin. Truth is his enemy. And now he has locked this enemy up. This is going to be Girkin's cell probably. This is not Russian prison. This is a prison for people who have not been sentenced to prison yet. And it's one of the better looking cells. The Russian prison system is a curse. If you go there, there is no converting back into the society. Crossing back to the topic of how this is connected to Wagner's mutiny, Putin has been almost unable to punish Prigozhin. Prigozhin has very powerful allies in Moscow. Of course, Putin took away Wagner and is going to dismantle it, defuse the units within different areas in Belarus, Russia and Ukraine. But he cannot do anything personally against Prigozhin because the man is too powerful. All of Russia sees it. If the Tsar is not strong enough to carry out punishment for those who mutinied against him, the Tsar is weak. Now that Putin feels his weakness, he cannot tolerate any criticism anymore. A strong leader can tolerate criticism, a weak one cannot. This is why Girkin is going now. Igor Girkin has asked the court to put him on house arrest instead of prison for 2 months, because 2 months is the official time the Russian government is arresting him right now. He says that he has angina and heart disease, and the Russian court system replied that there is a threat of him escaping abroad, and this is what Girkin replied to it, and it's priceless and it perfectly summarizes his situation in Russia and in the world. I'll read it to you. The investigator's statement that I can hide abroad is frankly ridiculous. I am wanted by Interpol in most countries of the world. I have been sentenced by the Hague Tribunal to life imprisonment for a crime that I did not commit. Girkin has been claimed a terrorist in most of the Western world countries, so he cannot hide abroad. And now he has been claimed an extremist in Russia. That was the paragraph they used against him. This guy has no sanctuary. Russia was his last sanctuary, and now he's going to prison. This woman came out to protest against the arrest of Igor Girkin. The label, the paper she is holding says, "Strength is truth." A very harmless statement, but immediately Putin's goons were sent to arrest her, escort her away, probably going to prison also. We have all seen this, but I will remind you again that truth is Putin's biggest enemy. A paper saying strength is truth is Putin's biggest enemy. Putin is afraid of the truth like cancer. He will lock up anyone daring to speak the truth. This is Pavel Gubarev. He spoke out against Girkin's arrest. He chose the side of Girkin, also a war criminal. He arose with Girkin in Donbass in 2014, igniting people against Ukraine. And then he self-proclaimed himself as the leader of the Donbass People's Militia against Ukraine. He was immediately arrested, as we will see on this footage, for speaking out against the arrests. And it's the same Putin's goons, the same guy coming to talk to him. Come with me if you want to live, basically. As you can see, escorting him away, going to prison also. Girkin's supporters are officially called in Russia the Angry Patriots Club, and the most prominent members of this club will be arrested now one by one. We must not expect any big reactions from the people of Russia, because the Russian people are not reacting like the Western people, and the Western people are usually hoping, oh, this is the mutiny, this is it, this is that. No, 20 years of Putin's propaganda have numbed the minds and the ability to think for themselves and to react. People are apolitical. They will just look down, they'll look him in the eye, you know, like in Les Miserables, the opening song. CIA Director Bill Burns warned Prigozhin officially. This is what he said. If I were Prigozhin, I wouldn't fire my food taster. He also called Putin the ultimate apostle of payback. And I've said it before, Putin hates slowly. His payback is slow and fierce. He's not a passionate man. Doesn't seem to have emotion at all if you look at his interviews. But this man is very dangerous because his hate is slow and steady, and it doesn't go away for a long time. Prigozhin will not be forgiven. And Putin cannot poison him or eliminate him right now, because Prigozhin is very powerful a few months from now, a year from now. And if the warning is coming from a CIA director, Prigozhin will live in fear for the rest of his life, which from now on will be a short one. My friends on the front lines, I will zoom into the Eastern Front, Northern Eastern Front. This is the settlement of Svatove, and if we go southwest from the settlement, we get the settlement on Karmazinivka. Russians renewed their offensive operations here, and they have occupied new territory. Quite a big chunk of it, actually. Ukrainians right now are trying to contain the Russian advancements, but they have occupied this entire forest right here, these windbreaks, these forest belts. This is one of the bigger Russian successes on the front lines in the past what, 3 months actually. So as much as I hate reporting on it, I cannot ignore it. Ukraine is sending reinforcements to the area to contain the advancement. I'm sure they will, but how much can Russia push before these reinforcements arrive is the question. Time will tell. Now, my friends, we will go to Bakhmut, and north from Bakhmut, Ukraine has liberated a territory. Russia occupied some, Ukraine liberated some. You see this new yellow area, mostly fields, some windbreaks right here. Ukrainians pushed the Russians out of this area, and as you can see, north, center and south of Bakhmut, Ukraine is liberating the fields and forests around it, but not pushing into the urbanized area. It spells a pattern. Ukraine does not want to fight in Bakhmut. They know what's in Bakhmut because Russia showed the Ukrainians for 1 year what it means to take an urbanized area, what it means to lose 60,000 KIAs into one city. Ukraine does not want that, so they are pushing from the fields and forests around Bakhmut to finally force Russians to pull out of Bakhmut in the threat of surroundment. They don't want to go into this meat grinder, and they don't need to. It's a wise decision, and we can see it reflects the Ukrainian doctrine of saving your men and not advancing in using any means possible. The political order is not number one, but the real military situation on the ground is what makes up the orders. We don't need to go into the city, we only need to take the flanks. The Russians will pull out. I really stand behind this logic because the worst thing Ukraine could do right now is throw away their infantry into this Bakhmut urbanized meat grinder. I'm so glad they're not doing it. Now, my friends, let's go to Crimea. Everybody likes going to Crimea, but not the Russians lately because Kerch Bridge has actually been closed again for traffic. But this is not one I want to talk about. I will zoom into a settlement called Oktyabrskoye. It is right here, a small settlement. It is not important. What is important is this military airfield. This military airfield was targeted yesterday by Ukrainian drones, and this area is 175, 180 kilometers away from the front lines, and we're going to assume the drones were launched a little bit behind the front lines, so the distance of these drones flying was about 200 kilometers. This is very scary news for Russians because if Ukrainians have drones that they manufactured themselves capable of flying 200 kilometers into Crimea and exploding there, exploding in the Russian rear as you like to hear it, the fireworks lasted for many hours. It was an ammunition depot next to the airfield. And on this photo you can see the geolocation and the coordinates of the explosion. Now, my friends, let's zoom into Yeisk. This is the Russian settlement on the Sea of Azov. If we zoom into it, we can see it also has a military airfield, and Russia has been expanding this very aggressively. On this footage you can see how Russians, in the past 30 days this happened, we can see the satellite photos. The plots where aircraft are held or stationed, they painted those to look like aircraft, and they removed the real aircraft, trying to bait Ukrainian missiles, Storm Shadow, drone attacks. But the thing is, Ukrainians are getting United States satellite imagery, United States satellite intelligence. I mean, these satellites are powerful enough to see Putin's facial expression from the Kremlin, from the space. I'm sure they can tell this is a painted plane, not a real plane. But I guess the Russians don't know it. Time to keep an eye on the Russian losses. 22nd of July 2023, 640 Russian liquidated personnel. Number is a little bit higher again because we talked about the Russian offensive operation in the Eastern Front, where they pushed and occupied some new territories. These operations are always very costly. They also lost 7 tanks, 16 armored personnel vehicles, which shows that in the offensive operations they use armored personnel vehicles much more than tanks. Tanks are a big issue for Russia right now. Working tanks especially. They have rusty old tank chassis by the thousands, but they're useless. They lost 19 artillery systems, 8 anti-aircraft warfare systems, which is unbelievably high. 8 systems, it's usually 1 or 2. If it's 8, this is a huge credit for the Ukrainian intelligence and drone units. They are responsible for this. 11 UAVs and 14 vehicles and fuel tanks and 5 special equipment. My friends, on these photos you can see Wagner fighters in Belarus training the Belarusian military, which you can see in the background right here. The truth about Wagner fighters is that yes, the convicts they recruited, they have no battle experience. Mobics from Donetsk and Luhansk also don't. But about 5,000 of Prigozhin's fighters are extremely well trained. The core, the best of his fighters, have not only 1.5 years of this Ukrainian war battle experience, they were also deployed in Syria and in other African countries before that, so you could say they have active fighting experience for 5 or 7 years. They are extremely experienced and they can teach, so it's a problem if they teach the Belarusian military. And here we can see them doing just that. Here you can see the Polish-Belarusian border at the time when Lukashenko was using immigration as a weapon, importing refugees from Syria to send them to Poland. It didn't work because Polish border held. Poland has sent the additional forces to the Belarusian border as a reaction to Wagner fighters relocating to Belarus. To that, Putin personally responded that any attack against Belarus will be considered as an attack against Russia. This gives us two messages, two hidden informations, that Putin does not consider Belarus as a separate country anymore because he speaks for it. Lukashenko is puppet, everybody knows it. And the second information is that Putin is afraid of Poland. If he reacts personally, immediately to the smallest movement of troops by Poland like that, he remembers the Grand Duchy of Poland and Lithuania, which was very painful for Russian Tsardom. He is afraid of Poland and the winged hussars, and rightfully so. Poland is becoming the most militarized country in Europe, the strongest military of the European continent, rivaling that of Russia. Only without the nuclear weapons. If you look what Poland has, which plans Poland has for the next decade, which purchases in the military sphere, you will faint. That they are going insane. Poland will be the strongest geopolitical force in the area in 10 years, mark my words. For the third day and night, Russia bombarded Odessa. Unfortunately, they also hit a lot of Odessan coastal infrastructure necessary to transport grain. Here on this photo you can see damaged and destroyed infrastructure. It takes a lot to repair it, and also these containers are filled with grain. About 60,000 tons a day are wasted. Now we have reported that Russia is using their Onyx coastal battery defense missile systems to fire on Odessan ground targets. These are anti-ship missiles that are extremely fast, and Ukraine doesn't have anything present in Odessa to shoot them down with. The only thing we know that could shoot them down are NASAMS and Patriot systems, neither of which are stationed in Odessa, so Onyx systems from Crimea are wreaking havoc on Odessan coastline, unfortunately. Kadyrov published this photo with the golden machine gun, and the bullet box says Ahmad's Sila, which is Ahmad's strength, Kadyrov's personal army unit. I don't know if he's gathering clocks or what's his issue. I mean, he also wants to retain his strongman image, but throughout this war he has been online with videos of him being drunk, intoxicated, with a swollen face, with something on his finger that is reading the pulse. His health is not good. And like Putin, his strongman image is failing also. And this golden machine gun doesn't change it. My friends, I now want to take this moment, like in every video, this is how seriously I take it. I want to thank the patrons. Sometimes my viewership in YouTube goes up and down because I'm a military channel. YouTube doesn't really like those channels. Some videos get demonetized. And it used to be very stressful for me, extremely. I mean, I'm going bald. So these patrons really take away a lot of the stress about funding on my channel. And I'm extremely thankful for them. And I thank you in the weirdest way possible by naming 5 new patrons with my Estonian pronunciation. Ingebjörg Beck, thank you. Keit Terribilini, Wilhelm Tell, Björn Eriksson, Jason Wilcox. Thank you to these 5 people. If you like my channel and you want to support, any amount is okay. $1, $5, you choose. Tier 10 and above, and I'll be reading your name, my friends. Thank you. Also, I would guide you to my Twitter account. 3 times a day you get the most important news about Russo-Ukrainian war in the most compact text format. A few minutes of reading and you'll know everything, every day. Also check out my Instagram. Link is in the description below. I go to Ukraine regularly to deliver the trucks that you are buying, actually. And I show you everything on my Instagram. I'll see you there. Until my next video, my friends, Slava Ukraini.